Do sit down. We're just about to have some tea.
Ladies and gentlemen, please do not panic, but scream. Scream for your lives.
Hey weirdos, the kettle's boiled. Welcome to Tea for Terror, where we take a favourite horror film and dissect it over a nice cup of tea. I'm your host, Andrew Graves, and my guest today is looking for someone, but it's not Kiss. Welcome, Tom from Shout It Out Loudcast. How you doing, fella?
Hello, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me. What a fantastic intro. You're right. We are looking for someone, but it's not Kiss.
What have you been up to? Because it seems like, I mean, we'll get into Shout It Out Loudcast in a second, but it seems like you're constantly, forever making podcasts. It's very impressive.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So my co-host and best friend of 30 years, we started Shout Out Loudcast about 4 years ago. So we're primarily an all Kiss podcast. But we have branched off into some other side casts, we like to call them. We do one where we once a month we review an album, not by Kiss, by a band, and we do that with another one of our friends. And then probably within the last year, my co-host and I started another side cast where we pretty much talk about anything, pop culture, movies, music, TV shows, just because we have a lot to say. And sometimes the Shout It Out Loudcast proper, obviously pigeonholes us into just Kiss. And we have a lot of things to say about a lot of things. And, we've done an episode on some horror movies and et cetera. So we're busy and we're having a lot of fun.
So do you want to say because obviously I primarily know you through Shout Out Loudcast. And that I started listening to that a while ago now. And
thank you.
And it's endlessly fascinating to me. And I think what you do with it is you don't just do the normal sort of Kiss kind of fanzine type stuff. You do kind of all, obviously you're not afraid of covering the bigger topics, but you really do a deep dive on a lot of stuff to do with Kiss, and it's funny as well. So do you want to tell, for those that aren't aware, those 5 people in the world that aren't aware of Shout It Out Loudcast, do you want to explain what it is, how it started, and how you and Zeus go about stuff?
Yeah, sure. So Zeus and I, again, we went to college, so we've known each other for over 30 years. We've been Kiss fans since I was 5 years old. We'll get into that when we talk about the movie. Zeus is pretty much the same. And, the fact that we've been friends for so long and share a common bond of our love for Kiss and our common bond for silly, crazy humor, as you know from listening to us, we just decided, we love Kiss and we love being silly and making silly jokes and pop culture references. Let's just combine all this. Let's have fun. So there are times where we are serious about Kiss. We'll have a guest on, or we'll break down an album, we'll review it. And then there are other times when we'll sit down, and we just did an episode recently where we talked about the girlfriends and wives of Kiss members and rated them. Everything we do comes from an angle of love for the band, but also humor. We're not afraid to poke fun at the band because, believe me, Kiss has tons of things you can poke fun at. Primarily, the topic of your show this evening is one of them. And we like to pride ourselves on the fact that everything comes from a love for the band, but with humor. We said this in our very first episode 4 years ago. We do not give the band any kind of foot rubs. We're not afraid to criticize them. We've had band members on the show. We've had, members of the band. We've had Bruce Kulick on the show. We've had a lot of big journalists on the show, people like Eddie Trunk and things like that. We've had some entertainers, Chris Jericho, Charlie Benanti from Anthrax. And, we talk about the band. We love the band, but we're also not afraid to kind of poke holes in some of the things that we think are kind of silly about them.
Yeah. I mean, what I really rate about it is that I'm not a kind of sport. I know you and Zeus are well into your sports and stuff. I'm British, and I'm not really into sport. I was kind of the nerdy kid that wasn't into sports and all that. I was into my horror movies and stuff. But I think I get, whereas you get your nerdy, your obsessive sports fans. I am like that with kind of horror movies and rock bands and Kiss and things like that. What I like about it is the fact that you take You know what? Some of my favorite episodes of Shout It Out Loudcast is where you took the concept of the Alive albums and you carried it forth. So what would be the
Yes.
real Alive 3 or the real Alive 4, and you get really, really nerdy about it, and I love it. Those are my
Yeah.
favorite episodes. I just love how you sort of break that. If
Thank you.
they'd have done, if they'd have done an elder sort of alive, what would that have been? It's brilliant, and the elder's an endlessly
Thank
fascinating
you.
topic as well.
Sure. No, thank you. And that's exactly what we do. We try to get really creative. Again, we stick to there are some, quote unquote basic episodes where we're, reviewing some of the DVDs or the videos or concerts, but we try to get creative and say, what would have been if they continued making live albums after every third or fourth album, what would the real Alive 3 look like if they took Dynasty and Unmasked and the solo, like, and that's, like you said, that's where we nerd out and just really love the band. And that's why when people say, oh, do you guys even like Kiss? Yes, we do. Go back and listen to our episodes. We wouldn't be 230 something episodes into Shout It Out Loudcast if we didn't absolutely love this band.
Where did it start for you with Kiss then?
Okay. So it started with, I was 5 years old. It was ironically 1978. Okay. I had an older sister, and then I had older cousins that were older than her. And this was late 70s, in the age where everybody had a stack of records, which is ironic because now I have a stack of records because vinyl is back. And at that young age, I remember going into my cousin's bedrooms and flipping through the vinyl and looking at the amazing artwork, seeing things like the cover of, Boston and Pink Floyd, Queen, Molly Hatchet, like all these really cool album covers. And I remember flipping and I saw Love Gun. And 5 years old, I said, what's this? And my cousin goes, oh, that's Kiss. I said, what's Kiss? He's like, do you want it? You can take it. And I said, oh, I'll take it. And to this day, I still have that 1977 Love Gun album framed. I have that at home. It's the same one that got me into them. I still have. So at that time, that's when Kiss, lucky for me, was at their peak.
Yeah.
They were on top of the world. They had released Love Gun, Alive 2, solo albums, double platinum, Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, which we'll talk about. And the merchandising, I just became obsessed with it, especially Gene Simmons. And as I got older, my love for Kiss started to merge with my love for horror, because if a lot of horror fans like yourself, they like Kiss because there's a lot of theatricality, the costumes, the blood with Gene, and what we're going to talk about with this movie here. And it just carried on, and now I always liked the band. My love for them was always there. It kind of came in ebbs and flows throughout their career. But ever since Zeus and I started the podcast, it's just renewed, especially when we do episodes and talk about older albums or, older concert performances. It's just really renewed the passion that we both have for how much we love this band. I mean, we're heading to New York City at the end of December to go to the final shows at Madison Square Garden. We're going to be there. We wouldn't miss that for the world. I mean, we've been a fan our entire life, so we have to see the final show. And it's been part of my life. We've been on a couple of the Kiss cruises, met some of the bands. We went to Las Vegas in May to meet Gene Simmons, and there was a weekend event there. So yeah, it's been a whole life.
Yeah. I think I mean, we'll get into this later on, but obviously me being a Brit, it's kind of Kiss is very different over here. The way that people kind of came to it was very different. But for me, I was lucky enough to have an older brother that was into a lot of stuff, and for me, my sort of inroad into Kiss was the Alive 2 album, and particularly just looking at that cover. It's
exactly.
just
it's still the best.
There's nothing more brilliant to a kid as that photograph of Gene Simmons on the front of Alive 2. It's just what and it was like, the things that I loved growing up now and still do, really: comic books, rock and roll, horror. That's Kiss. That's Kiss. That's
exactly.
Kiss.
Exactly. And then with Alive 2, then you open up that gatefold and you have that picture with all the flames. It's, I mean, if you're a young kid, how could that just not just capture you?
Because I've said this before. I've written quite a few articles and stuff, and I've just recently just contributed. There's a book coming out next year, which I've just contributed to, which is about Kiss and their various appearances on TV and the media and film. So I did a chapter in that book on the Tom Snyder interview, so all that kind of stuff. But
Yep.
For me, I always say, it would be kind of wrong to say that Kiss are the best band in the world. In subjectively, they are lots of people's favorite band. And
Sure.
I don't understand the hate for them, because I think you can. It's perfectly possible to really appreciate Kiss and what they do in terms of live stuff and performance without necessarily liking the individual members of the band. I can't actually say that I particularly have a great love for the individual. Every time they open their mouths off stage, they say something stupid,
Usually, yes.
But I just, there's something about, and for me, it's the classic era Kiss. The other areas of their career really fascinates me as well. The era between sort of 79 and 81 is fascinating, I think. But yeah, that Love Gun era. The era that we're kind of looking at today with the film, it's just unbelievable, and they recreated that. I went to go and see them on the '96 reunion tour, and it was just like being 12 again. It's just incredible.
Yeah, we were there for a couple of those shows too. And you're right, when you talk about Kiss and you talk, some people like chuckle or they giggle. And I always, Zeus and I always make this joke, if you don't like Kiss in any way, then you just don't like fun, because Kiss is the most fun band out there. They write hooky pop rock melodic songs that you can sing along to, that you can pump your fist to. And in the middle of that, they're visually stimulating you with blood and fire and pyro and, levitating drum risers. And I mean, how can you not like that? I mean, okay, maybe they're not Led Zeppelin, maybe they're not, the Who or the Stones. They don't want to be those bands. They want to be Kiss. If you want to listen to those bands, which are all wonderful, you can go and listen to them. It's the same. I always say it's the same thing. Sometimes I want a greasy cheeseburger. Sometimes I want a nice T-bone steak. To me, Kiss is like that greasy cheeseburger every once in a while. It's just fun.
As Paul once said, you listen to Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Exactly. Perfectly said. Not me. Yes.
Okay, Tom. So what was your intro into horror movies then? When did you start becoming aware or into horror?
Okay, it's funny because it's not that far off from when I came into Kiss, but I remember this. I remember this vividly. So, and it still scares the heck out of me to this day. It was 1979. I was 6 years old. Again, I had a sister that was 4 years older than me. And it was the TV miniseries of Salem's Lot, the Stephen King adaptation. And my God, like to this day, I still love that. And the scene that scared the living hell out of me, and I still get nightmares about it, is the famous scene of the little kid floating in front of the window with the fog and that music and the scraping at the glass. Oh, just incredible, incredible stuff. And then it was perfect timing, because then around 79, 80, 81 is when in America we started getting access to cable TV. And things like HBO and those channels that showed movies all the time. And then also right around that time in the US, you started seeing the advent of the VCR and video stores opening up. So at that time, it was constant access to everything. And other than Salem's Lot, the other thing that scared the absolute living hell out of me, and to this day, it's my favorite horror movie of all time, and one of my favorite movies of all time, is the original John Carpenter 1978 Halloween. That Michael Myers mask at that young age. I think the very first time I saw it, I believe it was when NBC was showing it for the first time. So it was a few years, obviously, after the theatrical release, and slightly edited. And the TV version, as we all know, has some additional footage, which I think is really cool. And at that time, there's really no, parental guidance with the TV. If a movie is on, everybody's watching it, or it's on in the background or whatever. And seeing Michael Myers just terrified me. But I loved it, and I continued seeking out, the Friday the 13th movies, and then getting a little bit older and being able to go to the video stores with my friends. And of course the artwork on those VHS boxes is what drew you in. And the best places to go were those independent mom and pop video stores. Those are the places that had the real crazy movies, because the chain stores like Blockbuster or whatever, they didn't carry any of that. So between cable TV and those videos, I remember my friends and we would go and see what the gnarliest movie we could be. I mean, look at this one. Guys, have you seen Microwave Massacre? Look at the cover of this box. Have you seen Pieces? Look at this. This looks crazy. And then we would rent them and we'd be like, oh my God. And nowadays you watch it. I think Pieces to me I still love that movie. I find it so endearing and so silly. But yeah, it's been a part of my life probably since being a Kiss fan. And to this day, I'm enamored with horror. I think right now we're in a great spot for horror with streaming services, with even theatrical releases in the United States. I think it's a fantastic, and podcasts such as yourself. I think it's a great time to be a horror fan. Yeah,
it's on those, the video shops. I mean, we had the same in this country, and obviously we had the kind of big video nasty scare in this country as well, and we had literally, we had our government at the time literally introducing legislation to try and protect people from these films, which is fucking nonsense, But you're right. Those covers, you walked into some of those gnarly sort of video shops, and you'd be bombarded with these covers. My second guest in episode 2 on Tea for Terror was a guy called Graham Humphreys, and he does, I don't know if you know Graham Humphreys, but he does a lot of the covers for sort of people like Arrow sort of releases and things like that. He did, and he's been doing it a while, and he did the original campaign for Evil Dead, and he's done stuff for Return of the Living Dead. He does all that kind of artwork, and thank God for guys like him, because walking into those shops when you're a teenager, because there's no internet, there's no Google, you couldn't find, you just had to go with the covers, and that was it. And it was like walking into as someone else has said before, it's like walking into 1,000 cinemas,
Yeah, it was. And you're right. And I love that with the advent of the like Arrow Video, Scream Factory, all the like Vinegar Syndrome, like all those, like re-releasing these movies and giving them incredible original artwork with incredible special features, and bringing these movies back to life that you thought you may never see again. I mean, I have a huge collection of Scream Factory and Arrow Video re-releases. They're incredible.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough in that I do quite a lot of writing for Blu-ray releases and things like that, so I get a lot of freebies as well. But it's just an absolute joy to write about some of these films. These fantastic boutique sort of re-releases that they're coming out now. It is a kind of little bit of a golden age, I think, in terms of physical media.
I agree. It's something to look forward to every time you see when Arrow's re-releasing something, or Scream Factory. And what's also kind of interesting too, for me, coming from being a music fan and being a vinyl collector, is that now you have these boutique vinyl companies releasing soundtracks. You have Sacred Bones and you have Waxworks, and they're releasing these, the Friday the 13th movies, or you're seeing, like these classic, like horror soundtracks with amazing original artwork. It really is a good time to be a horror fan, for sure.
Absolutely. So, I think it's probably time to introduce the film we're going to be looking at. Of course, this is what we're going to be looking at today. We are going to be examining Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, directed by Gordon Hessler, and of course, starring Kiss.
No gratitude need be voiced. Your mind speaks to us.
You're looking for someone, but it's not Kiss.
Yes. My fiancé Sam, he was taking pictures of you.
There are dozens of photographers out there. How could anyone ever...
He was here.
This is ridiculous.
Now, Tom, when was the first time you came across this fucking bin fire of a production?
Wait, are you saying this is not a good movie? This is the definition of a trashy cult classic, if you want to even call it that.
It is, absolutely, yeah. I watched it again today, so.
Oh, God, it's... So before I get into my history of this movie, so Zeus and I did last Halloween, we did an episode of a live
yeah, it's great
commentary of, it was it was hysterical. But so for me, my memories are very, very vivid of this. It came out. It's amazing what you remember when you're young, when something strikes you, a certain way. Came out in October 1978, or fall of 1978, just in time for Halloween season. And the funny thing is that I was in love with Kiss. And at the time I'm young, and again, there's no internet, so I don't even know about this movie. But my parents, knowing that I'm a huge Kiss fan, and they get used to subscribe to the old TV Guide magazine, and there's a Kiss movie coming on. We have to let Tommy know about this. So I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And I'll never forget. It was perfect. Now, I had never seen Kiss other than still photographs, posters, album covers. I had never seen them moving live. Okay. So the way that my house is set up is at the bottom of the stairs. You kind of go down the stairs. You kind of see it sometimes in movies where, you come down the bottom of the stairs and you kind of peek behind the railings and you can see the TV in the living room. That's how my house was set up. And I remember my parents saying, oh, the Kiss movie is on. And I came downstairs and I was so excited. And the movie starts with the credits of the band playing, and they're superimposed over the roller coaster, and they're playing rock and roll all night. And I was terrified the minute I saw Gene Simmons. The minute I saw him flicking his tongue and going, I was terrified. And I'll be honest with you, I don't even know if I remember watching the rest of the movie. I was so damn scared seeing them for the first time in real life.
Well, you probably can't remember whether you watched the rest of the movie because you probably fell asleep in the first half an hour.
Well, that's true, because for the first 30 minutes, yeah, that's the funniest thing. For the first 30, 40 minutes, Kiss isn't even in the movie.
Could you imagine anyone else? If you imagine Bruce Willis, and it's like, yeah, you got a new movie, Bruce. Yeah, you're the star, but you're not actually in it for the first 40 minutes. It's like, what?
It's incredible. And you know what? And it's funny, when you're young, you don't, the memories that you have, for me at least, I'm sure you're the same, and I know for Zeus it was the same. The memory of this movie is so different than the actual movie, because when you sit down and watch it, it's actually really terrible. I mean, let's be serious. But you can't help but be entertained by the incredible cheesiness of it, the snapshot of that era, of the way people dressed and behaved, and who doesn't love an amusement park? But my goodness, wow, it's tough to get through those first 30 minutes.
The thing that it fascinates me, and it still fascinates me now, even though everything you said then is absolutely true. I would agree with that completely. Yeah. Hearing you say, obviously it was very different. Kiss was a different, we were not really aware of Kiss in this country in the 70s in the same way that America was. Obviously we were, but it wasn't a huge thing, So
right.
Obviously I got into Kiss, when I was about 10, 11, 12, or whatever. So it was a thing then for me, but it wasn't a thing for everybody else. So the idea of someone actually seeing Phantom of the Park as it went out live on television for us in this country, because I don't think they released Phantom of the Park on VHS till about 87, 88, something like that. And that was the first. And I remember my mate buying it. I was unemployed at the time, so I couldn't afford it. But my mate bought it. It's about 25 quid at the time for for then, and that was a lot of money for a VHS then. So he bought it, and we were like, because we were like obsessed with Kiss, and like it's like, oh God, we've got it. And we put it on, and it's just the disappointment slowly seeping in.
That is. I have such a similar story. So in high school, one of my best friends from high school, I remember going to a record store, like a local record store. And at the time they sold video, music video, concert videos, things like that. And I said, oh my God, they have Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park on VHS. I'm like, I have to get this. We have to get this. I haven't seen this movie since I was a little kid. And it was the exact same experience. We got home. We were so excited. We put it in. And after about 15 minutes, we're like, what the hell's is Kiss in this? What I don't remember this. What is going on? Your memory and I will forgive me for segueing for a minute here, but I have that same problem with a lot of these classic horror movies. The memory of the movie sometimes supersedes the actual movie. Like I'll go back and watch a movie that I thought I loved when I was 12 or 13, and I'll watch it now and I'll be like, oof, that's just not good. And then it kind of ruins the memory. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, what cannot be forgotten though, that is worth remembering about whatever we say about this and however we're going to take the piss out of it. What is worth remembering about Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, and it's hard to understand now in the internet age where you can literally access anything, anytime, straight away.
Right.
It's the fact that, as you and Zeus have pointed out a number of times, and it's something that's frustrated the hell out of me when I was growing up, Kiss were the most visual band on the fucking planet, and yet for a long time there was nothing. You couldn't access anything, and particularly you couldn't access. You might have got like really fairly dodgy video footage or fan footage from sort of concerts from the 70s, but you certainly couldn't get stuff Kiss on film live. So actually what makes Phantom of the Park invaluable, particularly at that time, well, those live clips, as kind of roughly edited as they are, and it's a bit of a nonsense because the first time we see them live on the thing, it's kind of, they start with Black Diamond and it's all over the place, but it was like, wow, this is for the first time we're seeing this brilliant footage, this great crystal clear sort of, filmed on actual film footage of the band. And that's why certain parts of this film are invaluable, and still stand up. But
no, you're right. I agree. The live footage is fantastic, because it's the Love Gun Alive 2 costumes and the music, and because it's a film, you're getting close-ups of Gene's face, you're getting close-up of Ace's guitar, you're seeing like things that you've never ever seen before. And I will say this, from an entertainment perspective now as an adult, I don't know how people, I find it hilarious to hear the band talk. When they're sitting by the pool with those capes and Ace is doing his little one-liners and these little jokes. And, when Gene is stomping through the park and, busting through walls, I find that it just endearing and fun. But that being said, I don't know if that was the intent. I think they tried to make this into a real movie at one point.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of this. Again, as Kiss, particularly Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, they are notorious for reinventing the band's history all the time, and
absolutely, absolutely.
It's like, and the thing with this film is that I would say, I mean, we'll get more into the individuals, but I think it's very, very clear that Paul are taking this absolutely seriously. They may look back and mock it, but they are in this film. And Gene is he is deadly serious with this, and Paul is maybe slightly less. Ace and Peter don't give a fuck, but
Nope.
Ace doesn't give a fuck in a way that he's still kind of enjoying himself, You can tell he doesn't give a fuck, but he's Ace, Peter doesn't give a fuck, and you can tell he's kind of pissed off being there. And he didn't even turn up for the ADR, did he? Someone else is doing Peter's voice.
Right.
So yeah, there is all this stuff going on. But what about? I mean, how? Because I would say I think that this was. I mean, there are other factors, but I would say that this was the beginning of the end for classic Kiss.
Totally. And it's been reported that by the end of the filming of this, the band couldn't stand each other. Like you said, Peter hated being here. Ace was really, really heavy into the drinking, and he couldn't give a shit about being part of it. He had fun because he didn't care. And Peter hated it. Paul and Gene, they thought this was going to be a very, very big deal for them, a very serious thing. That combined with just the general malaise that came over the band, especially during the making of, the Wheels. A lot of people don't know the Wheels started to come off even as early as Destroyer. When Ace wasn't showing up for a lot of guitar things, and they started getting some ghost players and stuff, and they made it through Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun and Alive 2 and all those. But the wheels were starting to really come off. And I think the disgrace of this movie, the way it was met through fans and critics, combined with the substance abuse of Ace and Peter and their general anger about dealing with Gene and Paul, they and then they try to spin that the band's disagreement led to the solo albums, when in reality the solo albums were reportedly part of a contract that were going to happen regardless. That's a story that really has been revisionist history, is that, the band wasn't getting along, let's do solo albums. They were going to do them anyways. And you're right, that was absolutely the end of classic Kiss. I think Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park kind of puts the rubber stamp on that.
And as much as we can say, and by that I don't mean to say it's all about the movie. That's why classic Kiss kind of ended for that time. It
was just the timing. It was the time.
Yeah, it was kind of like the straw on the camel's back, and because I think you could view it from sort of 76 onwards, like you say. I mean, Christ, they must have been knackered, absolutely knackered. They do just. If you think about the kind of, I'm not knocking modern musicians or anything now, but if you think, you might do an album a year, maybe an album a couple of years. Kiss, they're putting 2 or 3 albums out a year. You just constantly touring. It's not an excuse for making a terrible film, but why they must have been burned out, and if
well, think about it. In 4 years, they made 6 studio albums, 2 live albums, a compilation, and 4 solo albums, and a movie. In 4 years, they did all that. That most bands don't do that in an entire career.
And touring in between and appear on TV.
And correct. So from 74 to 78, they did all that. So it's a miracle they even made it that far.
Yeah.
It was incredible. Now, I know people say that was the end of classic Kiss. For me, I absolutely adore Dynasty that came out in 1979. Absolutely love that album. And I know people kind of cut off classic Kiss right around 78. Peter's on the cover of Dynasty. He plays on it a little bit. Ace plays on it a lot. He's got a couple songs. But yeah, that was, I think, Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. Like you said, it might not have been the movie itself that led to it, but it was probably the straw that broke the camel's back that kind of was ruining it, with all those things that were adding up between the substance abuse and just the general band disagreement. And like you said, the exhaustion of being together nonstop for 4 years.
Yeah. And I think that, I'm in agreement. I mean, yeah, I think it kind of was the beginning end for classic Kiss, but yeah, I would, in classic Kiss, up until sort of 78 or whatever. But, you know, like you say, I've still got a massive fondness for them. You know, I love Dynasty, and I
Oh yeah,
I know it's not, you know, a lot of people don't like it, but I like Unmasked. You know, I think Unmasked is a
I love
good
it.
album.
My co-host hates it, and I love it. That's one of the biggest disagreements between the two of us, is that I love it and he hates it.
Yeah, those Ace tracks on Unmasked are just incredible.
Oh, how can you not love Torpedo Girl?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Talk to me is genuinely one of my favorite Kiss songs. It's great. I love it.
Yes, it's fun. Like I said, it's fun. You have to like it.
And coincidentally, there's a new horror film just come out called Talk to Me. I was a bit disappointed that they didn't have Ace on the soundtrack, because it's an Australian film as well. So, you know,
exactly. Now I have not gotten around to see Talk to Me yet. So I've heard wonderful things, but I haven't gotten around to it yet.
It's good.
So.
I'm not going to spoil it. It's really good. It's got a very, very good 80s vibe, but is a very modern film as well. It's great. I recommend it. And it's kind of done in 90 minutes as well. It's no kind of stretching it out. It's good. It's just straight in, straight out. It's great. Okay, Tom, so let's talk. Hesitate to say this, but
I like how you can't even get the question out without laughing.
Let's talk about the plot, because obviously this is a Hanna-Barbera production, but the plot kind of makes sort of old episodes of Huckleberry Hound seem more credible. It doesn't really it doesn't really make a great deal of sense. It's a bit like a shit Westworld, isn't it?
It's actually so it's Hanna-Barbera. So if you're familiar with the classic episodes of like Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?
Yeah.
which are it's like that, but it's just live action and much more poorly executed.
I mean, what struck me today, because the version I was watching today was the version that's on Kissology, so it's Attack of the Phantoms, which is the European
Attack of the Phantoms,
and they were
correct,
really pushing the solo albums. So
right.
For those that don't know, the original Kiss Meets the Phantom, the American cut, has classic sort of Hanna-Barbera sort of cartoon type music over the fight sequences, whereas in Attack of the Phantoms, the European version, they take away most of that sort of incidental cartoon music and replace it with tracks from the solo albums. Now, what I would say, now, even though a lot of people have criticized the use of cartoon music, what I would say is that at least the cartoon music, as bad as it is, was kind of queued up to the action. Whereas I think on Attack of the Phantoms, just supplanting those songs within it doesn't really work, because they're just plonked in. There's only one, I think the only time it does work is when we have the Gene bot or the Gene robot, and he's kind of terrorizing the guards in the park, and we get that introduction to Radioactive. That's that works, but mostly just dropping those solo album tracks in doesn't really work, because they're not really queued up to the action or anything. And also you've got to question, I mean, I have a lot of love for the solo albums, but you know, the choices they choose for that to drop in, they're not the best tracks, are they? They're not really that representative of Kiss at that, you know, the classic Kiss, you know.
Yeah, it's really odd, because the American version of Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, that Hanna-Barbera cartoony 70s music is just it's so silly. I mean, it minimizes any attempt that they were trying to make to make this movie you know, exciting or action packed or thrilling with that ridiculous music. And you're right that on paper, Attack of the Phantoms, the European version with the solo albums, you're like, of course it's perfect. The solo albums just came out. Let's put them in this movie, push them, give people a taste of the new music. But there's no context to the songs. Like you said, it's just, okay, hit play on, that's the kind of sugar Papa likes off the Peter album, and it doesn't make any sense with what's going on. A little bit of the radioactive clip, like you said, but the rest of it, it's just odd. You can tell how quickly this movie was made, and that it was strictly a vehicle to get people to see Kiss in action.
Yeah, and it's kind of, joking aside, it is a very, very cynical venture, and it's a kind of shame, because you've got Kiss, and it could have been something else. It wasn't. But also, the other thing which is kind of interesting, you got Gordon Hessler. Gordon Hessler, he had some horror chops. He'd worked. He was a German. And he'd kind of moved over to Britain, and he directed a number of movies in Britain with Vincent Price for AIP, and so he and one of the films he directed for AIP was Scream and Scream Again. Now, Scream and Scream Again, I don't know if you're aware of it, Tom, but it's I can say, hand on heart, Scream and Scream Again is one of the films, because I grew up in the 70s. I'm a little bit older than you. So I grew up in the 70s in Britain, and parents then were very lax in terms of what they were allowing their children to watch. So my parents were, certainly gratefully, and I would kind of watch horror films and dig them, and you get that little vicarious thrill. But actually, hand on heart, I can say Scream and Scream Again was a film that genuinely terrified me, kept me awake at night. And the reason for that is these brilliant scenes in the film where he starts off with there's a jogger, and he's jogging through London, and then he collapses. This is how the film starts. And then later on, this guy wakes up in this what he assumes to be a hospital, and he's not quite sure why he's there, and he's not quite sure, but he thinks there's something wrong. And the end of the scene, he pulls back the sheets, and someone's cut his leg off. And this poor guy is kind of trapped in this place, and every time you see him, he's lost another limb or another whatever, and that freaked me the hell out. I was just, as a kid, I was just expecting to wake up with no arms or legs. It absolutely terrified, traumatized me, literally traumatized me. I remember clearly going out the next day to play and not being able to join in because I was so tired, because I've not slept, and this thing had absolutely killed me. So I in some ways I had high hopes with Gordon Hessler, but no, it doesn't really work out. Like, the plot doesn't really make that much sense. I mean, you've got the villain is Devereaux.
Exactly. You have to say it like that. and
it's just. There's a version of this film which I would like, in that, he is this kind of disgruntled professor type who's making these creations for the park, and they've kind of, this idea that he has been taken for granted, and then they get rid of him, and he tries to commit some sort of revenge. I can get that I could dig that. That's a fairly good standard sort of plot, and it would have worked. This crazy guy. Like I said, it is a kind of poor, a substandard Westworld in a way. But it's what doesn't make any sense is this vendetta he has with Kiss. I don't really see. I know, and he keeps going on about these creations he's making, these brilliant fun. He's got this work is really important. But then you look at the film and you think, well, what is your work? You've made an incredibly unrealistic Gorilla and a fat Peter Criss. Why is that it? Is that the sum total of the pinnacle of your work? It just doesn't really work. It's funny, it's entertaining, but it's just, just doesn't really. I don't think they ever really understand what they're doing with it and what they've got.
No, I think that one of the first problems is, like you said, Gordon Hessler, he's got some chops, he's got a resume. But I think when you put Hanna-Barbera in charge of the production, I think that's where anything that Gordon Hessler could have done well, I think that gets taken away from him by Hanna-Barbera kind of being part of this, because the Hanna-Barbera, they're a cartoon corporation. Everything they do is cartoony. and you're right. The plot on paper maybe has some potential, but Devereaux was responsible for making. He does the Chamber of Thrills, which I guess is supposed to be creepy and scary and has like some animatronics, which is kind of cool for the time. But that other thing, the chain gorilla, the astronaut, I mean, it's stuff that people, walk by and put their drink on while they're tying their shoes. He's not making rides that, you know what I mean? And the amount of money that is going into this, that's why, and let's bring up poor Carmine Caridi. This is a guy that was in The Godfather Part 2.
Exactly.
And now he's in this movie. He's probably wondering, what the hell happened to my career? Why am I in this movie? But the plot just falls apart with such silliness that you find yourself wondering, what am I watching? What is happening here?
Also, the other thing that kind of struck me again today is that, you've got these kind of silly fight sequences, but they're few and far between. And in between that, you either get no Kiss or you get Kiss just walking around. That's it. They just walk around the park at night. That's the extent of their action, mostly.
Or worse, you get them sitting by the pool with their cool little silver robes on, making little quips to the police.
Or playing a 5-hour version of Beth.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I like that song. Don't get me wrong, but who wants a 5-hour version of Beth?
Yeah, or seeing what happens when they mess with the talisman, and when Paul forgets how to play the guitar, when Sam is going after the talisman, that all that kind of business. On paper, again, I keep saying this. I think, look, Bill O'Coin even said it. They've already done the Marvel comic book. They're superhero, larger than life characters. I like the idea of giving them a talisman with a superpower, like a Batman or like a Superman or whatever. I think that is a cool concept, but as we both said, the execution of all of this just is there was not enough time and effort and energy put into it. The focus was to get Kiss on screen, which is ironic because, like we already said, they're not on screen for most of the movie.
Yeah, and also I think we have to factor in the time period. I mean,
sure, because
it was kind of like, I'm not saying nothing on TV at that time was any good, because of course it was. You got some classic stuff, but it was almost like, if you were gonna have something, if you're gonna have a product and put it out there, 78 wasn't a great year to convey that, particularly if it involves special effects or because many people didn't have the budgets or the technology. If you look at something like, I was obsessed at the time, around the same year, was with the Amazing Spider-Man, the live action TV show. Mm-hmm. And it's god awful, but I still have fond memories of it because it was the only thing. It was the only thing. But there was no way you couldn't have done Spider-Man. You couldn't have done Spider-Man effectively then. It was nonsense. It was just and secretly I loved it as a kid. I made the costume and all that, and I wanted to do that. But secretly at the back of your head, you're thinking, but it's not very good though, is it? It's not as good as it should be. I feel like, whatever the intentions were for this, I think, given the period and given that it was a TV movie, they were never really going to pull anything cool out of the bag at that point.
I think you're right. I think the fact that it was 78, made for TV, dropped right around Halloween for obvious reasons, Hanna-Barbera producing it, Kiss kind of oversaturating themselves across all media formats and markets, it really had no chance. And I think the only chance that it does have is to live on as a cult classic, as amongst Kiss fans, horror fans, and pop culture fans. I think that's kind of how it exists. I have fond memories of it, because of the nostalgia of growing up in that era and actually seeing it on TV, or at least seeing the first 2 minutes of it on TV. But, what I wish and Zeus and I have talked about this, this year will be 45 years since its release. I wish that Paul and Gene would acknowledge the Kiss fans, sentimentality and nostalgia for this, and observe that date with something, a Blu-ray with how great would it be now to have a comment, Paul and Gene doing a commentary of that and laughing at it the way that Zeus and I did? It would be fantastic. But they're on record as saying that they wish it never existed, and it's a joke and whatnot. But I think that would be such a great thing for Kiss fans to acknowledge that 45th anniversary.
Oh God, yeah. If they released a box set, a Blu-ray box set, 4K, whatever,
incredible.
It
would be incredible.
First day purchase. You gotta, and I think what they should do, Paul and Gene should do a commentary, but they should have another commentary track with Ace
and Peter. Oh,
it'd be amazing.
It would be incredible. It'd be incredible. I agree. Yep.
I think that, they've kind of softened a little bit around it, but it's just
have
acknowledge it, go with it. It's just, God, it's awful, but it's something you did, and you can't pretend you didn't do it. Just go with it. And this would sell out straight away. You can imagine, Kiss Online, a limited edition version of that, it would just go straight away. You've talked about in your show, everybody takes the piss out of the Elder. What happens when they re-release it? Gone. Sold out straight.
I was just going to say that the two most beloved and beleaguered things in Kiss history are the Elder and Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. And Kiss fans absolutely, for the most part, adore them, either legitimately adore them or adore them from a nostalgia point of view. And not so much Gene. Paul is the one that absolutely loves to discredit things that he's done in his career, and I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I wish he had a little bit of a sense of humor and said, hey, you know what? At the time, the Elder, working with Bob Ezrin, we thought this was going to be a fantastic record. It was a misstep for us. But instead, he shits on it. He shits on the people that like it. And Zeus and I have talked about this ad nauseum, that I wish that that revisionist history of dumping on things that are part of your career, acknowledge it, maybe tongue in cheek. You've done enough great things in your career. It's okay to have fun with some of your missteps. And like I just said, two of their biggest missteps are two of the biggest things that Kiss fans love. And, but you're right. You hit the nail on the head. When they acknowledge the 40th anniversary of the Elder, that picture disc gone, the T-shirts gone. The other picture disc, the stuff was gone. Mm-hmm. It was sold out, and now they're all collector's items because that's how much people love that stuff.
It just feels as though, to me, out of all the Kiss members, I think Paul, it just seems so guarded, and it just feels like so unhealthy, and just let it go. This stuff is documented. It's there. Trying to pretend it's not is just crazy. It's not like you have to talk about it every time. Of course, as an artist or whatever, a musician, right, you're going to want to push the new thing. Of course you do. Of course.
Yeah,
that's
definitely
just natural. As a musician, right, whatever we think as fans, the last thing you've recorded is your favorite thing.
Exactly.
It is. That's what it. But you with something, they kind of, I think, Paul especially, he seems to want his cake and eat it. He wants to kind of have this shit to sell, but he wants to dump on it all the time as well, and it's a bit disingenuous, and I wish he'd chill out a bit. You can see it in Gene. Gene says stupid stuff sometimes, but you can see he's mellowing, and he loves
to have fun.
Yeah.
He loves to have fun with some of the history, and he doesn't have a problem kind of joking on it or making a goof. But Paul has to be very, very kind of like, a little bit of a wise ass, a little passive aggressive. And he wants you to pay attention to what's going on right now, which is fine. I get that, like you said, but you have a 50-year career, and there are some things that you might not like that your fans like. Acknowledge that. Respect the fact that your fans might not like something that you like, because by shitting on these things, you're shitting on the fans who like them too.
Yeah, yeah, and you can't have it all ways. You got to just go
Right.
with it, you know.
Right.
You know, Pete Townsend won't like everything he's done. He's going to look back at some stuff and think that was a load of horse shit, you know. But
Of course.
you just got to keep going and just acknowledge your fans. And
Yep.
I don't know. It just feels like there's nothing natural about Paul. Everything is a front. Everything, you know, down to his obviously his kind of stage patter. That's all very, very tired and rehearsed now. But it's almost like
Sure.
him off stage is the same as well. It's kind of, you can almost feel him reading from a script, you know. And it's just you just want to kind of give him a cup of tea and say, you know, just chill out, Paul. Just chill out, you know.
There's really nothing there's really nothing natural about his interactions. He's like you said, he's very guarded, he's very protective, he's very insecure. He doesn't want anybody to pass judgment on anything he says or does, so he puts out this cardboard cutout version of himself. You know, we say it all the time on our show. I think Paul wanted this to be over. COVID threw a wrench into their plan, and he probably cannot count down the days enough until December in New York City, and he can move on with his pasta, with his painting, and that's his right. That's his privilege. But you're still in KISS. Respect that and respect the fans and acknowledge that. And if people want to talk to you about things in your career, you know, don't act like it's a hassle is all we're asking for as fans.
Exactly. Okay, Tom. So here's a question for you then. So,
okay.
Yeah, I think we can agree that Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park is not a masterpiece. But okay, here's a question. Okay, you're producing this in 1978. What would you have done?
I think the first thing that I would have done is I would have had Kiss be the main focus of the film. I think I would have had a lot more situations of them maybe even rehearsing or maybe even showing them putting on their costumes or some kind of involvement where the band is the front and center. That's the reason why people are tuning in. That's why you're making this movie. I think I would have really tried to dumb down the plot of the movie. There's no need to make it that cumbersome. You could have made it as simple as, you know, like I said earlier, you could have made it as simple as like a Scooby-Doo, you know, mystery that there was, you know, some strange thing going on at the park where the machines were operating on them by themselves at night, or there was a ghost or something, and you know, Kiss were being called upon to investigate and use their powers. Loud music scares the ghost away. Something where the band is the focus, because Devereaux is the focus of this movie. And his character is ridiculous. What he's bitching about is ridiculous. Why he doesn't like Kiss is ridiculous. So I think make it very, very basic. Center it on Kiss and come up with something very simple and very digestible that even the youngest of fans could have taken in.
Yeah, because as it is, it feels like the movie, The Phantom of the Park. That's the thing. And at some point, someone said, "Oh, we'll take this and we'll drop Kiss in," and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Gordon Hessler had no idea who Kiss were and what the significance of Kiss was. And it's kind of, and I'm sure he was a decent dude, you know, but it just feels like Kiss are shoehorned in here. Absolutely. I
agree.
And it seems like they're an afterthought. And that's
perfectly
ridiculous.
Said. Yeah, you could have almost made this movie with, you know, the Village People, and it would have been the exact same thing. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's weird because they tried the second half of the movie, especially the end, you know, where they're doing the live performance, where you have evil Kiss, you know, playing Rip and Destroy, which is hilarious. You know, taking Harder Than Hell and turning it into Rip and Destroy, where Paul Stanley's on record. I think he wrote that in the trailer in like 3 minutes. He's like, we got to do something. You know, that whole thing of angry Kiss whipping the crowd up into a frenzy, you know, and then the real Kiss coming out and fighting each other on stage. I mean, that's kind of silly and funny and entertaining, but at least you're seeing Kiss, right? At least you're seeing Kiss doing something that you'd never see them do. You know, they save the day, they throw on their guitars, and they play a concert for the fans. Like that's kind of cool when you're considering what the rest of the film is giving you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, with no sense of irony. I mean, genuinely, my favorite scene in the entire film is that the snatch you get of "I Stole Your Love." That is just incredible.
I agree.
You know?
I agree. It's incredible. It's. I mean, that's probably one of my all-time favorite Kiss songs. You know, one or two if I'm ranking them. And that clip right there is fantastic. And what they should have done is, why not have 2 Kiss concerts? You know, have the movie start off with a Kiss concert, or have, you know, because first of all, you start the movie off with the band superimposed over rides, and then that ridiculous attempt at special effects of what it was, Paul and Ace like sitting in a bumper car or something, swirling around. Just have the show open up with them performing, and then if you want to kind of drift away and get into the Devereaux, you know, something like that. But you need more Kiss. You absolutely need more of the band.
Yeah, that first, like I said, the first 30 minutes, this film, it's a chore. It's
brutal. It's brutal. And you know, the section of them in the Chamber of Thrills, again, this is 1978, so it's kind of reminiscent of, you know, I'm not sure if this was a big thing over in the UK, but the Hardy Boys Nancy Drew mysteries. Okay, those were that TV show was very, very popular in the late 70s. Now, in retrospect, well, those shows weren't terribly well acted and well written, but they did have a creep factor to them. There was a little bit, for that era, there was a little bit of, you know, suspense, a little bit of action with the boys looking at mysteries and things. And that came out around that time. The scene of them in the Chamber of Thrills, like, it's like you can see that they're trying to do some of that, but it just gets ruined by the ridiculous effects and the music, and then that little segment just goes by the wayside.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, temptation is you can just sit and rip this thing apart, and deservedly so, you know, because it's not great. But part of me is genuinely sad because it's like, when I was saying earlier on, I was writing that chapter in the upcoming book, and I was writing about the Tom Snyder interview, and the first reaction to that is to laugh, and it's funny. But I ended up coming to the conclusion. I'd only intended to write about 1,500 words. I ended up writing like 3,500 words on it, because I ended up, the conclusion was, it's sad as well, because it, you know, yes, you can see Gene looks a bit, you know, he looks a bit pompous and all that, but this is the kind of end of a band that you love, and it's just disintegrating before your eyes, and you know, it's quite a sad thing. So as much as it's kind of entertaining to take the piss out of this film, it's also a little bit sad as well, because it's an end of an era.
Yeah, no, it's a great way to look at it, because you're right, because we're, you know, the entertaining parts of this movie, they're entertaining because they're so cheesy and bad and poorly written. So your instinct is to kind of laugh at it and giggle at it, and you're laughing at it. And like you said, if you break it down, that's sad. This is my favorite band in the entire world, and we're laughing at them, not with them. And like you said, the Tom Snyder interview is the same thing. That is absolutely one of the most priceless, most hilarious things ever. But you're right. You said the word you used was perfectly. It's the disintegration of a band in real time. And that is sad.
Yeah. So Tom, any last thoughts on Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park?
Well, look, I would never try to convince anybody that this is a good movie or a well-made movie or a well-acted movie. But to me, it's very, very important to me as a Kiss fan. It holds a very, very sweet spot, full of nostalgia for me. I always get a chuckle and a giggle and a smile on my face whenever I see the artwork or a screenshot or something on Facebook, or even when Zeus and I did the live commentary. I love that it exists. You know, we've talked a lot about what we would have done, what should have been done, what's good, what's bad. But, you know, Zeus and I talk about this all the time. I'm glad it exists because it allows me to take it for what it's worth and enjoy it how I want to enjoy it. I think that's part of being a Kiss fan.
So do you want to give Shout It Out Loudcast a quick plug? Where can we find that particular podcast?
Sure. So yeah, we have a website. You can go to shoutitoutloudcast.com and we have all of our information there, all of our episode links, links to our social media, but you can look us up on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We have an email address at shoutitoutloudcast@gmail.com. And wherever you're listening to your podcast, you can find us, and we're all over social media. So please check us out.
Yeah, do. If you've got any interest in Kiss whatsoever, it's a really, really good listen. So honestly, just go and check out Shout It Out Loudcast. Just remains for me to say, please check out our sort of Facebook account for T for Terror. We've also got an Instagram account and a Twitter account, or whatever the fuck it's called now. Twitter, what is it? Twitter X. Yeah, all that. And obviously you can listen to T for Terror wherever you listen to your podcast. We're all over the place. It just remains for me to say thanks, Tom, for coming on. Genuinely, Jenny, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. It's taken a while to set up, but I'm so pleased you could come on. It's been an absolute blast. So
Andrew, I can't thank you enough for having me. This has been fantastic. Two of my favorite things in the world, talking horror, talking Kiss, and Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park, is I hold it near and dear to my heart. So I can't thank you enough for having me on. It's been a great time.
God bless you. So remember to call round next time. Make yourself at home. You're probably dying for a nice cup of tea for terror.
And remember, my friend, future events such as these will affect you in the future.